Why are top American players fleeing the Canadian NHL system? Does Canada really have a problem attracting and keeping those players? Or is this really a mental mindset and an expectation set brought on by a development hockey system throughout the United States and Canada that prepares you for the NHL? Well, spoiler alert, I don't think it's taxes. I think it's the mindset that players get in growing up through their system of development and what expectations they have when they make their NHL team. So let's go ahead and let's talk about it right now. Now, the first place people always go when they take a look at this is the almighty dollar, but we know there are actually three likely categories that contribute to where a player wants to play as they're approaching unrestricted free agency, or when they pull an Adam Fox and they want out of Calgary, or then when they pull a Jacob Trouba and demand a trade, or when they pull a Patrick Laine and say they want to go, or when they pull a Johnny Gaudreau or a Matthew Tkachuk and they want to go. There's been a lot of players that have wanted to leave Canada in the last little while, but it really is for three key areas. It's the taxable money that comes in, which we're going to check off the list really quick. It is the living, the city, the economy, and the community that you are living in. And then finally, it is going to be the team itself, their chance to win a cup, including the legacy and history of a team. And regardless, this exercise is very simple because people want to boil it down to one simple thing. Every human being is different. And I think I have a very plausible answer that people haven't been talking about on YouTube that I want to share with you. But let's go ahead. Let's check off the tax thing quick, shall we? We just head over here to a simple tax calculator. We're going to use the Forbes Advisor. We take a $10 million payday, something in the realm of a Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau payday. We take a look at the state of New York and we realize they are going to pay they are going to make an after-tax income of $5.4 million from New York State. And we all know there is differences with this in the NHL. It's not that simple because there's visiting games, there's other places, but let's just make it simple because I am not an accountant or a tax lawyer. So now when we go ahead and calculate Florida, you can see there is a drastic difference between Florida and New York. And finally, if I move over to Canada and I put it in the EY calculator, one of our larger accounting firms over here, you end up putting in $10 million and you can see in Calgary, it's $5.2 million. In Vancouver, it'd be 4.6. In Manitoba with the Jets, it's just under 5. And in Ontario with the Leafs, it is 4.6 of after-tax income. Those are some big dineros when you're taking a look at it, but you can't control that. And like I said, go down the path of visiting games versus not, versus USD, Canadian D, a whole bunch of stuff. There's nothing you can do about that, so there is no point in stressing over it, but it is a valid reason. Now let's look into the secondary reason, which is teams that are ready to win. This is just going to be an opinion piece. If your team is ready to win, everybody knows when a team is ready to win. Calgary was. Columbus likely isn't if we use the example of Johnny Gaudreau. That can factor into a player's decision, especially if he hasn't won a cup before. But once again, you're going to see cycles, so I don't really want to stick with that. I want to go with number 3, and that is going to be an NHL player's upbringing, what league they've played in, and likely what their mental mindset could be when they're picking a city and what they've seen in the world when they are a teenager. We have a Canadian system and we have an American system, and the Canadian system and American system are not separated by country of residence. It's funny, it's just separated by a border and what teams play where. The Canadian system is called the CHL, known as the Canadian Hockey League. It comprises 3 leagues, the Western Hockey League, the Ontario Hockey League, and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. And then you have American teams that also play in that league. Americans are allowed to play in that league freely, but they have to go to a certain league based on what state they live in. Then you have the United States Hockey League, and specifically the United States Development Program. And we're going to talk all about them and where guys like Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk have come from. This league and this program is very unique. The United States Development Program is closed. It is only open to Americans, and the United States Hockey League allows Canadians to play, but as import players, whereas the Canadian Hockey League does not consider Americans import players. But where these teams are located, the age grouping of these teams, the arena sizes of these teams, the expectations of the players on these teams are going to drastically change, and I believe they are going to alter a player's mindset when they are looking to choose which cities they want to play in. Now, before we go deeper into those leagues, I want to point out a couple things for you guys. There's a lot of people out there talking about the greatness of playing in the United States. We've got to get a couple factors out of the way here. The media and what happens in the United States is king. Everybody in the world, regardless of your opinion on the United States, when you are rich and wealthy, NHL rich and NHL wealthy, the United States has a lot of advantages over many other Western countries. I don't want to get into a whole political piece about it, but let's just say we all can likely agree, you let me know in the comments, that it is good to be rich in the US. When you have over 300 million people, one of the most populous countries in the world, with some of the best technology in the world and some of the greatest cities in the world, and you are rich, whew, that place is very attractive to be. Now, Canada is an excellent place to be if you're living in the middle income life like I am and many fans are, but it's also an excellent place to be if you have money and if you're looking for certain things to do as well too. British Columbia is one of the most scenic, beautiful provinces in the world. Hard stop, period. Vancouver is a global city and gorgeous. These are not joke cities. These are global cities. Calgary is one of the best cities in the world when it comes to oil money, when it comes to new business, and when it comes to modern, clean living. Calgary checks a lot of boxes for a modern city over 1 million people. Toronto is obviously one of the top 3 greatest hubs in North America. It goes New York, and then your opinion on LA, Toronto, or one of the big Texas cities, in my opinion. I have Toronto as a clear number 2. That 20 blocks of downtown Toronto is rivaled by nobody but New York, in my opinion. You also have Montreal, which is arguably one of the most beautiful cities in the world with its European flair, near 5 million person population in the surrounding area, and just an absolute rabid fan base for hockey. So we know the media can put pressure on players, but I'll be honest, it puts pressure on players everywhere. We know fans can be crazy, but there's just something about playing in La Belle Province where everybody is clamoring for a Stanley Cup or for the Toronto Maple Leafs, one of the most famous sports teams of all time, or even in Winnipeg where the barn is small but the fans are loud. There are a lot of really good reasons to play in Canada. So we can talk about the cold, we can talk about the darkness of playing up north, but it is a beautiful country and it has a lot of its own benefits. So let's go ahead and talk right back about those developmental leagues, because I think there's more there than there is on the cities themselves. The first league we have to talk about is the United States Development Program, NTDP. There is a U17 and a U8 team that is generating a lot of NHL draft picks, and Matthew Tkachuk was one of those players. This is a program where they scout 2 years before you can play for the U17 team, meaning you're 16 years old. So at 14 years old, they go countrywide scouting the best for an invitation camp, and if you make this team, you are on this team and developing to age 18 at this point in time. It's very hard to be released or let go from this team once you've made it. This is the best of the best. They pluck the best players from the best states across the United States in the best programs and say, congratulations, you are the best the country has to offer. And right away, when you are a kid, that is going to do something to rewire your brain to let you know, I'm not just number one with a bullet. I'm number one with a bullet because I play for the United States Development Program and I'm representing my country. That is going to alter a lot of things. They play in the United States Hockey League. So the United States Hockey League, if we move over here, is a league that plays up in the Northeast and in the Midwest in what we like to call the M states. There's obviously more than the 4 big M states playing hockey now, but you can see all the programs here, including the United States Development Program down here. Its head office is over here in Chicago with the Chicago Steel. And you can see when you take a look at a lot of these places where a lot of these teams are playing, they're in towns that are going to be very popular, where hockey is going to be banging. It is going to be fun to play in here. I can assure you, I've had players who've played for the Phantoms. What up, Adam Ingram? I've had players that played for the Chicago Steel, like a Dawson Pasternak. These guys down here are having a blast playing for this league. It's one of the best development leagues in the world. And this is where the U17 team plays when they are developing for the next level. The under 17 team doesn't necessarily play in the league in terms of looking for a championship, if you will. They play in the league looking to develop, so you can see what their schedule looks like here. This is an all-inclusive schedule where they're traveling to some of the coolest places in the United States in some big small towns to play some big small town hockey, and it becomes a big deal for them. The U18, the big boys, end up playing in the NCAA Division I, Division III divisions, so they play exhibition games against those teams, and they also do play some tournament games against USHL teams. You can see here, they got the Muskegon Lumberjacks, they go down to the Omaha Lancers, then as you come down, they have the University of St. Thomas, they have a 3-game series against the Youngstown Phantoms, they have a series or a game against RPI, a Division I team in the United States. They play Army. They have international tournaments against the Czechs, the Finns, the Swedes. Then they come back. They play Yale, Boston University, one of the biggest producers of hockey players out there, and even the famous University of North Dakota. So these guys not only travel the world playing the best of the best in international competition, but they travel the United States playing in some of the greatest college arenas that are out there, all while waiting for their name and number to be called in the NHL draft. You can see here with this map where all the D1 universities are located and what areas are going to be playing. You got the North Dakota Fighting Hawks up here. And as we can say, most things are concentrated around the big M states, as you will. But there are a lot of great schools around here that the United States Development Program gets to play in one of the most attractive loops in hockey history. Now let's move over to the Canadian Hockey League, shall we? When we move over to the CHL, what you end up seeing here is the Western Hockey League. So the Western Hockey League incorporates Manitoba all the way through to BC and then northwest of the United States. It's very simple. If you drew a line right here from Manitoba south, if you were born anywhere there as a United States player, you can play in the Western Hockey League up in Canada. This loop is one of the most difficult loops in major junior hockey. What's major junior hockey, Ryan? Well, it's age 16 to 19 with an overage clause for two 20-year-olds per team and an underage clause where exceptional players like Connor McDavid or Connor Bedard, the Connor Squareds, apply to the CHL to play at 15. So you can play from 15 to 20, but the organic age, as you will, is from 16 to 19, with your NHL draft age being at 18 or 19, depending on when your birthday is. Elite players in Canada are going to play on these teams at 16. They host a draft at age 14 or 15, and when players are ready to play on their 16th birthday, they are usually on these teams playing against 20-year-olds immediately at 16. They are shipped off to a different province. They are to live with a billet family. They are to play over 70 games in a year. They can be cut. They can be traded. They can be sent down to junior A programs. They can have their heart broken. They're away from home. They're away from their family. They're away from their parents. They're on the road. They're on a bus in a pro-style system against adults as teenagers. It's a grind. We just painted a picture for you of the United States Development Program where you play with one age, your age group, in some of the best facilities in the world against older talent, but you are catered to as the best. You are protected and you are developed. In the Western Hockey League, the goal is to win the championship. The goal is to win the Memorial Cup. The goal is to put the best on the ice, and 16-year-olds will ride the pine, be sent down, be cut, and be traded at will, just like a professional hockey league team. That is going to change your mindset. But distance matters as well, too. If you play in Winnipeg for the Winnipeg Ice of the Brandon Wheat Kings, you actually have a 2 to 3 week road trip where you do not attend school. You attend school on the road, you take the bus, and you actually hit the loop of every single one of these teams and then hit the loop on the way back. It is much easier to play when you're playing in the BC loop or the Alberta loop because your travel is a lot less, but those teams in Manitoba really do get punished and have to learn how to play on the road. Then you have 5 teams in Saskatchewan. Manitoba, Saskatchewan have similar populations, but guess what? Saskatchewan is one of the most spread out, small town loving places in the world, and we love them for it. These are some of the best hockey players in the world and some of the best teams in the world here. If you had a choice, I want you to think about something. Do you want to play in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, or do you want to play in Chicago in the United States? It's a little bit different, isn't it? Wherever's going to help you get to the NHL is the answer you should give, but we all know that's not the way it goes. The Ontario Hockey League is the Ontario version of the Western Hockey League. It's concentrated around Toronto. It is obviously a league that is much better for travel. It is a more famous league than the Western Hockey League, although you do not have a choice to play in the Ontario League. If you were born in a Western province or the Western United States, you must play in your league. This has places like the Sudbury Wolves or the London Knights, one of the most, if not the most famous junior team there. Every team here has pro-style systems and pro-style games, And if we back up over here to the Western Hockey League, places like Edmonton, Calgary, so the Calgary Hitmen, the Edmonton Oil Kings, the Vancouver Giants are owned by their NHL teams, and you do play out of NHL arenas. Now, going back to the OHL, it can be similar, it can be different, but it is a little bit more of an easy to travel league. Historically, this is considered the #1 league in the world to develop, but it does compete against the WHL and the QMJHL. They flip back and forth. And then finally over here, you have the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and the Quebec Major Junior League has quite a bit of travel because you're playing on the islands, the Atlantic provinces over here. This is obviously where Sidney Crosby and Nathan MacKinnon came from, but you see a lot of famous teams here in Quebec as well too. So this is the loop you get to play in Canada. Now, you've seen the travel, you've seen the difference. We've talked about the ages and we've talked about the facilities. So you're really coming out of this program two different ways. If you leave the Canadian development system, you started at 16, you likely played anywhere from 0 minutes, meaning you were a healthy scratch in the stands because winning is money in Canada. And you have fought your way onto the 4th line, you fought your way onto the 3rd line, you fought your way onto the power play. Again, unless your name is Connor Bedard, you might just start out of the gate that way, but that's generational player. You've battled your entire way through this system, and through battling, you have gained the mental fortitude to learn how to play the game 2 minutes a night. You've learned how to be a healthy scratch. You've learned what it feels like to get traded, and you've learned what it's felt like to play in a pro system. Once you leave a system like this, you are going to be very humble if you have made it through a system like this, the meat grinder, if they will. That means when you join an NHL team and a coach gets hard on you, or a coach benches you, or a coach moves you to the back of the line, you have already gone through these failures previously in your career, because as a 16-year-old, the odds of you displacing a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old are lower than if you are a top 17-year-old only playing in your age group. Canada does not consolidate their 16, 17, and 18-year-olds into one age group. You are forced to play with men immediately, and you are forced to play ages above you, just like that in the Canadian developmental system, and that will change your perception of what you see. It will also change your perception being on a bus for extended periods of time, forcing you to graduate high school while you move through these systems. So you're going to have a different mindset, and you're going to likely develop a mindset at this point in time of, I'm just happy to be here because I'm going to work my way up this roster, whatever my coach needs, whatever my team needs, I am willing to contribute and to do, because I have done it. I have been there. I've played on the bottom. I've worked my way to the top, and I'll do it again when I make my pro team. That is how these players see the world. Now, there's downsides to this league. Players exit out of this league because the meat grinder is too much at times. Sometimes coach using you as a tool is not the best relationship for a player. Development can take a back seat for a player. It can feel harsh. And you don't have your parents with you. You are alone in a billet with strangers, hoping that the other 18 and 19-year-olds on the team are actually going to take you under their wing. And sometimes they don't, because you have displaced one of their friends or local teammates, because you as the all-star 16-year-old got that spot and not them. There's fighting allowed in this league. You play with a half visor. It's physical. It's tough. Now, when we move back down to the United States League, you are locked into your team. You're not being sent away from the National Team Development Program. You are staying on the United States National Team Development Program for that year. You're developing, you're working your way through the roster, and you are the best of the best. They aren't necessarily going to play a heavy top 6 like you are in the Canadian hockey leagues. You are going to develop all of your players, because the goal of this program is to get as many players to near 100% to the NHL as possible. Whereas in the CHL, the two 16-year-olds that you end up putting on your team at 16, you're hoping they're still there by 18, which they usually are. So you have 2 to 4 draft picks eligible every year that you're trying to get to the NHL as a CHL team. That's it. You're balancing winning with getting your 4 players into the NHL, whereas the United States Development Program isn't focused on winning. It's focused on getting you to the NHL and developing you for the World Junior Hockey Championship to play for Team USA. So what does this all mean? To me, this means when I've talked to players and I've worked with players and I've seen all of these systems firsthand myself, this tells me that you are going to have a very different mindset entering the NHL depending on the league you played in. One league is going to behave in the matter of a player just wants to work their way up the roster. They've seen failure, they've seen trial, they've seen tribulation, they're ready to go. Another league is all about developing your skills to become the best of the best. When you're told you're the best of the best for that long and you're kept in a system of pure development where, yes, There are simulated scenarios of failure for United States Hockey Development Program players. There are hard hits. They play against great players. They play against men in the NCAA when they are 18 years old. But at the end of the day, everybody is pushing them and cheering them on to make it to the NHL, whereas in the CHL, I would argue that the players have to do that on their own 2 feet. There are fantastic programs, there are fantastic coaches in the CHL, but there is a little more trial by fire in that league than there is going to be in the simulated world of the United States Development Program. And then finally, we have to talk about international development as well too. Canadian hockey players only come together for 3 to 4 weeks to form Team Canada at the U17, U18, and World Junior Hockey Championships, and then they disperse back to their club teams. Whereas in the United States, it's the United States Development Program, and that's it. That's where they come from. So they're guaranteed to play the international stage, which is very popular for these players. They're guaranteed to play in a top 6 role, or feel at least like they're playing in a top 6 role, no matter where their position is on that team. And they're playing with their own age group in some of the best facilities in some of the most beautiful places in the world with fantastic development coaches. The Canadian Hockey League, you're grinding to make Team Canada. You're hoping to get invited. You're playing club hockey. You're looking to win. You're playing in a pro style system, and you do have amazing coaches there as well too. It's just different. This is going to change the mindset for players. So this is where I get my opinions that when I look at the Calgary Flames right now, Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri signing to play on those teams doesn't surprise me at all. I don't think it's a matter of money. They got paid money. Sure, they lose a little bit more to taxes. They're playing in a beautiful city. They have an opportunity to win, and they were happy to leave the teams they were on. Huberdeau was shocked at first, but signing that 8-year deal, I'm sure that guy's pretty happy now. They are happy to play in the city of Calgary, and they're happy to capitalize in on and help them win a Stanley Cup. Matthew Tkachuk wanted to punch his ticket and go to an American team in an American program where he was familiar with that type of system. He knew he could play a top 6, punch his ticket anywhere he wanted to go. So it is a little bit of a different mentality. Johnny Gaudreau wanted to go back and play with his family, but I always do kind of in the back of my mind believe that when you come from the United States development system, you always kind of want to get back there. It's just what you remember. It's what you love. It's what your heart craves. We all crave the nostalgia of our teenage years. We want to get back into places like that. So I do think that plays a piece in it. I'm not saying this is 100% right, and I'm not saying there's a silver bullet as to why American players seemingly at the top of the level don't want to play for Canada. Now, this is not all American players. These are American players at the top echelons of their careers. These are the Adam Foxes, Gaudreaus, and Tkachuks. And yes, I just picked on 3 Calgary players. Throw in Jacob Trouba there from Winnipeg as another player. These players have just seen other things. They have other viewpoints, and they want to move down there. So what I am saying is Canadian NHL franchises need to draft top-ranked American players with caution and know that it is a possibility that they may want to go back down. European players from Sweden and from Finland and other places like that play in similar situations to what you see in Canada, similar small towns, not necessarily the high life, little bit of a grind. They will have an easier time adjusting to cities like Winnipeg and Edmonton than somebody coming from one of the big M states of the United States National Development Program. That is my assumption. I cannot go ahead and speak for everybody that's coming through. So I've seen a lot of things about this. I think that's something that people don't really know about. It's the intricate workings of that. I hope I've taught you something at least about the systems. I'm curious about your opinion down there. And like I said, it is not a silver bullet. There are too many factors to contribute one magic remedy for Canadian teams there, but I think we have now seen enough of a pattern that Canadian general managers have to realize if you're taking an American player, he may ask for a trade before his 7 years is up. You may control him for 7 years, but teams are starting to lose that control now, and I still see a plethora of Canadian players willing to come up north to sign big money deals to go play for their home cities or cities that are up here. Huberdeau may be from Quebec, but he's happy to play in Alberta. They're willing to take those paydays in order to win and to play for franchises that have media popularity, beautiful cities, and absolutely great people in it. Everybody's going to make their own choice, but this will give you a little bit more context. Thanks for being here, everyone.